back in the side of the side plate, and you got to kind of hold it in there as you put it on, because it's going to want to fall out. So you're just going to slide the side plate back straight down. Sometimes you just kind of got to rock it back and forth until it finds its place.
And you can feel it when it seeds in.
You'll
right?
feel it, yeah, it'll kind of pop. Good thing I like to look at is the two posts come right up to these holes here. You can see them right there, and you'll know when it's on there,
Right on target.
they'll come right in. So sometimes you need to play with this. See how if you kind of pick it, it's got the lever's got to slot into that clutch plate. So that's what kind of hangs it up. So when you pull it back, push it back into gear, it'll fall into place, and this side plate will just fall right on. So now that we got the side plate on, we're going to go ahead and tighten up the screws. There's no specific order on which ones to tighten up first. Yeah, you're just hand tightening. There's no reason to really cinch them down. Just a nice snug tighten. Let me get another trick for this. Just dip your screwdriver in grease. The screw should stick right to it.
And you don't put any grease on the screws themselves or oil or per se?
You can put a little grease on the tips of the screws. That way it'll help them, it'll prevent them from getting corroded inside the frame. It does help a little bit, yes. So I would put grease. Oil is just going to break down and run off too fast, so you do want to use grease. It will last longer.
If you're going to do it.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, definitely use grease. Just a little dab of grease on the tip of the screw.
Little dab will do you.
Little dab will do you. Okay, now that we have the side plate screwed back down, we're going to go ahead and put the pressure washers back on. Now I left them all together in the same stack, so I know all I got to do is just slide them right back onto the reel.
They don't need to be clean?
Nope, they don't need to be clean. Even if there's a little bit of grease on it, it's fine. It'll kind of help them from corroding, because a lot of salt does get into this area of the reel.
Yeah, that's a jig stick there. That's the wrong one. You don't have, it was like a bass rod, you know, right.
Okay, and on to the tricky part. This is probably one of the hardest things to do when you're working on a Trinidad, and a lot of people do lose their little click pin, because it is a spring-loaded pin that sits in there, and you have to get this on. You got to hold that pin in there while you're screwing this down. So the trick to this is you need to get a little flathead screwdriver, small enough to fit into the hole of the top of the drive shaft. Now once you have that, what you're going to want to do is take that tiny little click pin, stick it into the hole where the spring is, and just kind of hold it there. Then you're going to want to take your star, and you're just going to want to stick your star just on top. Just let it sit there. Take your little flathead screwdriver, and what you're doing is that hole goes all the way down to where that spring and that click pin are. So you want to go down there and you want to hit that click pin. And you'll feel it when you hit it. And then you want to pull it back into the shaft and hold it into place. That way I can let go of it and it won't spring out at me. And then once you got that held in there, then you can just start the star, screw it down, and once you get the star all the way down, then you can let go. And the little click pin hits the star.
That's way cool.
Yeah.
That's way cool.
It's a tricky little pin.
So that little screwdriver is the key on it.
The little flathead screwdriver is the key. And now that we have the click pin and the star back on, we're going to go ahead and put the handle back on. Got the little washer that was underneath the handle. Then the handle, we use the factory specs, or from the factory, we put it on the inside. You can do it inside or outside, whatever you prefer. And then we're going to go ahead and put the handle nut back on.
Outside just gives you a little more radius.
Exactly. What I'll do is just hand tighten this. And again, the handle nut retainer, it's notched, so in order for this hole to match up with the hole there, you have to have the nut in a certain spot. So if you look, there's a couple little dots right by there. What you need to do there is point one of the points of the nut. You got to have it pointing directly at one of those little holes. So I like to hand tighten it first, and then I just need to move it a little bit more, so I will just move it just a little bit, kind of look at it. Looks good. The hole should match right up. Then we're going to go ahead and screw it down. Okay. Now that we have that done, we're going to go ahead and clean up the spool, the side plate, and get those back together. We'll start with the spool. Again, you're just going to want to clean up around the edges, clean up any dirt or any salt that you can see on the outside and on the inside. And you're going to want to clean the spool shaft. No oil, no grease, nothing. Nice and dry. Now that you got that all cleaned up, you're going to want to take a drop of oil. We use Shimano mineral oil. Just going to put a single drop inside the bearing. Just one single drop. That's it. Just kind of move it around. Make sure it's dispersed throughout the bearing. Wipe down the handle shaft or the spool shaft just in case you got any oil on it.
And one of the biggest mistakes people make is they put too much oil in, right?
Yes, yes. All it needs is a drop per bearing. Grease the gears, and that's the only lubrication you need in the reel. Everybody thinks you need lubrication everywhere. You don't. The least amount of lubrication you have, the better, because that's just less lubrication to slow things up. So just a drop on the bearings, no lubrication on the spool shaft, nothing on these gears. These stay dry, and that's it. After you've got that lubricated cleaned up, you just want to go ahead, slide your spool right back in. Should just slide right in, just like that. We're going to take this left side plate, drop the screws out of it. All you got to do here is, again, just put one drop of oil on the bearing. I'll get a Q-tip, kind of just spin it around in there so we get it moved up. And that's it.
That's it, huh?
That's it. Take your side plate, match up the holes, put your screws back in, and you're ready to go.
Over lubricating is probably the number one.
It is probably the number one thing that you could do to really mess up a reel. Just the tolerances are so tight in the reel that any kind of lubrication, any kind of grease, it just slows it up because it's too tight of tolerances. Not too tight, just hand tight. Now that you got it tightened up, you tighten down the drag, and you're ready to go.
Inside Sport Fishing, proudly brought to you by Ford. Ford, the official trucks of Inside Sport Fishing. Ford trucks, built Ford tough. And by Shimano, makers of the finest fishing tackle in the world. Fish with the best, Shimano. And by Hotel Palmas de Cortez, Playa del Sol, and Hotel Punta Colorado, the finest fishing resorts in Baja.